Welcome, friends. Thursday, 29th of February or so, my computer was informing me. You're going to have to excuse me. I know I look like somebody's great aunt, sort of lightly heated up, but you'll have to excuse me. We're facing a blizzard here. I'm in Nevada City. We did a theater event last night, which was fantastic, slightly torturous, but fantastic. I was planning to make my getaway today back to Malibu. Got two days of driving, but it looks like we might be snowed in. So I'm here for the duration, and we've been running around like blue ass flies all morning. So hence the garb. Okay, well, today, very happy to be inviting back today some guests, a number of the faces which you've seen over the last couple of years. Certainly, this is a popular segment, the psyops that we've been doing. We established this as a 3 or 4 part series. In point of fact, you know, the whole Lazarus thing could be transposed into just this kind of endless deep dive into psychological operations. When Dan Willis and Jane Evershed and myself and Christy, my producer, when we were playing with the idea of the psyops, we started to have these 2-hour long conversations and pre-production meetings. And the more we looked into it, the more we realized, well, everything in that sense is a psychological operation. One could even say that existence is a psychological operation. The galaxy, the holographic universe is a psychological operation. It's so much more than that. But the fact of the matter is everything is a construence. Everything is a construence of agendas, visible and or invisible. And where we situate ourselves in the indivisible line, I guess, makes the difference. And that, of course, brings us to the Lazarus Initiative. How do we, you and I, self-elect to resurrect ourselves from within the thrall of the fallen light of Atlantis, or of the arcane symphony of the archonic lower elemental forces and the realms of the demon, and, you know, cast adrift as we purportedly are, according to the Cartesian logic and the Einsteinian Darwinian model of false light reality, tick-tock, time, tempo, temporal reality. It's all such a godless fiction. Actually, we're here, lucid, alive, luminescent, and indefatigable, I think is the word. You cannot dampen the human spirit. Here we are in a spirit of true inquiry with the Lazarus Symposium. And today's piece is going to be introducing back into the fray most beloved personality within Lazarus, and somebody who's so accomplished. In fact, I have to say it, last night in the theater event which I was doing, which was a packed theater in Nevada City, Ilana Freeland's name came up a couple of times with people in the audience questions, and I was able to say, you know, you want to speak about Ilana Freeland, just tune into the Lazarus Symposium tomorrow. You know, she's going to be our guest of honor. I'm very, very, very happy to bring Ilana Freeland back into the Lazarus Symposium. Ilana, happy to see you.
Oh, that's what a nice thing to say, Sasha.
Well, it's true.
You mean in Nevada City? I have a couple of fans. Wonderful.
You have a lot of fans here, my darling. Many, many fans indeed. Also going to bring on Jane Evershed. Hey, darling girl, good to see you again. Long time, a week, 10 days since I saw you, whatever it was, in Los Angeles. How are you faring?
That was a jolly good time, Sasha. That was a jolly good time. I loved it.
It was a very great time. Loved it as well. Christy, I'm not sure what's happened to Dan Willis, but I can see he's not with us. Are we likely to see him? I'm not hearing anything from Christy. Okay, that's fine. We're going to crack on. So again, by way of a sort of preamble, friends, let me just jump into a slightly bigger screen so you can see the state of distress that I'm in here with my hair. Today is a significant milestone as we conclude our series on the greatest psyops in history, a journey that has taken us deeply into the annals of history and exploring the key psychological operations, so to speak, that have sculpted our present reality, the status quo. And in this final installation, we're set to challenge the reigning deceptions and narratives surrounding a myriad of current controversial topics. And so the aim of this discussion today is not only to unveil the essence of those psychological operations, but to decisively break away from their harmful patterns. And this is psycho-civilizational trauma, cultural trauma, and all of those patterns in the ancestral song, which carry through to today and still determine the outcome oftentimes. So the degree to which we were fucked up as children is one thing, but the degree to which our ancestors were subjected to the butchering and the marauding and the dominion of evil empire and of of forces that I dare say we can hardly even imagine. You go back 6,000 years to the nadir point in the grand procession of the equinox, you're doubtless going to get to a time of Dungeons and Dragons and all sorts of weirdness and horrors in the civilizational basement. We've been subjected to so many things that we can't even recall psycho-intellectually, but the song carries in the blood. That's the thing, and that's the importance, really, of this conversation. We navigate this area of significant change and healing and growth, and that's what this time of revelation is all about. It's about the healing. It's about the redemption. It's about the absolution, how you and I become the point of absolution. But these conversations, and the one today, is seeking to spark transformation and to mold our reality. I won't say our future, because our future is of no consequence. It is to mold our living present in truth and in authenticity. So a return in that sense to the eternal mother. That was the central theme of my big discourse last night in the theater, trying to tally all of these subjects together of archaeocosmology, cosmogenesis, the disrupted history, the great resets, the Sabbatean agendas, all of that stuff, and bring it into reconciliation, into the now. And all we need to consider now, individually and collectively, is a return to the eternal mother, stepping back from idolatry, stepping back from Caesar and from bending the knee to a redundant patriarchy, which is still standing there like Cronus, towering over us, threatening our life and limb. Actually, it's a different scenario when we simply revoke, retract, redact, pull ourselves back from the contracts, the soul covenants, the contracts, the spells, the bonds, the registrations, the tabulations. No contract. Thank you very much. And begin instead to return the flower, return the rod, return the talking stick to the perennial, the eternal mother, which is the earth plane, Tara, not the moon. This earth plane will do me just fine. Thanks very much. So that's essentially the archetypal language we're dealing with here. Jane Evershed, as you well know, is an artist, researcher, activist, and fellow at the New Earth University, and probably my bestie. And, you know, there's a lot more stuff that we've got planned for later this year. But for now, Jane, in light of the conversations that we had at the Conscious Life Expo, what we were speaking to and what we're speaking to today, your summary of the importance of this archetypal transitioning from the old, dying, wheezing Cronus to the eternal mother.
Well, I think you're right on target, Sasha, when you speak about the eternal mother. I prefer to call her the nurturing mother archetype. And it is key that we get back to that nurturing mother, not in opposition to the father, not at all, But this nurturing mother element that's been so missing, I'll be showing you how they did it, they basically aborted her from our realm altogether. And I'll just be showing you how they did it in as fast a way as I can, but the best way I can, and how they usurped everything, our spirituality in every area of our lives, to remove that eternal mother that you speak of.
And, you know, part of my conversation last night at the theater was to speak to the fact that that the eternal mother or the grandmother energy is not a male-female thing. The feminized patriarch also represents that, the perennial mother, the incubator, the healer, the nurturer, the one that is now going to nurture and cultivate, heal and redeem and absolve. So the feminized patriarch, men, and I was explaining my rationale for being passionate about this to the audience was the fact that personally in my life, I've got a lot of men who are farmers and veterans, well over the age of 70, who are a hardcore demographic of people who follow me and support me and send me letters, and beautiful letters. And when I'm touring, these are the men I'm embracing, I'm holding, and they're elders, they are men, but they're the feminized patriarch, and they're such an incredibly powerful archetype. And I was trying to tether or tally the feminized patriarch also equates to the grandmother energy and to the eternal mother in that sense. And then you look at other archetypal creatures. I mean, to throw a rock at this venal bitch's head, let's just momentarily look at Hillary Clinton, because that's a classic example of the polar opposite. And I don't like to allude to individuals here, but in this case, I don't mind, because the woman is bereft of the fabric of soul. But she is so far in polarization to the eternal mother or to the grandmother energy, and yet masquerades as it, and has masqueraded as that. And part of my presentation last night also alluded to one of the greatest Catholic icons in history, the grandmother icon, Mother Teresa. Again, so how is it that we keep falling into this pit of illusion and delusion and deception with icons like Hillary Rodham Clinton assuming the role of the wisdom keeper, the grandmother wisdom keeper, and Mother Teresa, politically and esoterically?
Well, feminism itself is patriarchal, for one thing. It's part of that whole scheme of the masculization of women. And, you know, you've got your Mother Teresa's and so on. Let's look at how men have been imposters and tried to steal the realm of the nurturing mother for themselves in disguise throughout history, as wives of presidents, as Mother Teresa's, as you'll see later, Georgia Tann. She was rescuing children, but no, she was sex trafficking them. And so you see this dichotomy where men have throughout history have posed as women in order to don that nurturing mother cloak, and they are imposters just as much as Hillary Clinton took on this mantle of, you call it feminized. I don't really think it's feminized. I think that the trick is to get to the point where the masculine embraces both the feminine and the masculine within them equally. And it doesn't mean to say that this makes them any less masculine. And the women embrace their masculine side. And that is when we're going to get unity consciousness, because that is what they're trying to blur the genders to the point where men are becoming women and women are becoming men, until finally that's just one little tiny step away from being chipped, and the whole technological invasion, the mRNA, all of that stuff, allowing that in, because there's not any genders left.
Okay, so riddle me this. Why do they the invisible masters in that sense? Why did they? Can you see those balloons going up?
Yeah, lovely. Let's have a party.
But I don't know where they come from. The weirdest thing has happened in the last week. My computer, I think it's been hacked. So I'm doing live broadcasts, and these weird icons like those balloons and thumbs going up and thumbs going down are just coming onto my screen. Nothing to do with me. I assume it's going to get a whole lot worse. Okay, friends, so brace yourselves. But I think my computer's been hacked. It's very, very odd stuff indeed. I've never seen that before, but I just saw it. Balloons. Okay. Why do they, the invisible masters, need to go to such unbearable lengths to construe this kind of muddying of the archetypes and flipping of the hemispheres? Why not simply just round us up like the cattle that we are, apparently, microchip us, and herd us off, or send their death rays down from satellite and extinguish us? Why the push me, pull me? Why the play? Why the theater, in your view?
Well, that is a difficult question to ask, but I think that they're up against a lot more than you think. I mean, the human spirit is indefatigable, and we have the indigos among us, those who are going to change the world completely with their DNA activated. So they've tried every little thing in the book, including the mRNA stuff that they're injecting us with and all of that stuff. But we keep rising above because we are connected to divine source, and they are connected to a lesser force, which is satanic and dark and of a very low frequency. So this is why it's so difficult for them. They can't do it.
Very good. Very good. Okay. For sure, there is a quanta connected to the human, to the angelic atom seed in the human, which is the alpha omega template that emerges in this entire realm of expression through the human. In my view, the human is the grail, the key, the essential element to the Jacob's ladder, so to speak, for all of creation in this temporal universe. I am certain in my own mind about that. And I'm certain in my own mind that that is why genetic interventionism of the angelic human has been the kind of essential raison d'etre of these elemental forces and these archonic draconian elements in the cosmos, seeking to find their way back home through us, either through force and dominion and genetic mutation and manipulation, or through other means. But that's my essential takeaway is we are the crucible. The human being is the cross, the Jacob's ladder. Ilana, you're back with us. What say you?
Yes, I agree, and that we are divine beings down here having a material experience is one thing, but also as a student of Rudolf Steiner for many years, I really see that my main job this incarnation has been and continues to be facing the evil that is unleashed in the world on people who did not choose it. And through technology now, it looks like I've made that turn into technology. Through technology and understanding how it works is my hope that it will strengthen people and they will not fall for that temptation to think of the human being as being a low caste, evil tendency creature, but rather a divine being under assault by the forces that have been in this world for thousands of years. That's kind of how I see it, Sasha.
Beautiful. Thank you. Beautifully summarized. Jane, you're going to jump in to do a presentation of sorts. A note to the audience here. Dan Willis, it appears, has a power outage. In fact, Ilana Freeland just had a power outage, which is
right.
why we lost her. And Dan lives not too far from where you are.
Oh, so he does? Okay.
Yeah, we're assuming that there's a power outage.
I see. Yeah.
But we'll wait for him to join. By the grace of God, he will. Jane, in the meantime, you're going to do a brief presentation, and then Ilana's going to do a brief one as well shortly thereafter. Jane, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Sasha. We'll start out with the rebirthing the nurturing mother archetype. as the psyop to undo all psyops. Because the return of the nurturing mother archetype brings the rebirth of Mother Earth with it. And our evolutionary skeletal framework has been limping along without feminine bones. So it's no wonder that we keep falling over and we're unable to enter multidimensional consciousness, because this famine of the divine feminine frequency has caused the greatest psychological and physical damage on Earth. And not only that, but there's been this concerted effort to eradicate the divine feminine and masculine and target angelic humans. And all this has been working in tangent against us toward post-humanism is the ultimate goal of them. And the only reason we need to know this is not to fear it, but to know what we're dealing with so that we can avoid it. And for future generations too, to look back on history and say, ha, 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 one day they tried that, but they didn't get away with it. So when we know exactly what the psychological operations are that are being used against us, we can decode these deceptions and then move more seamlessly into the Earth paradigm. Next. And the mightiest step that was ever taken to abort the nurturing mother archetype was to exclude her from religion. And there's never been a truer spiritual mother represented in Western religion in particular, except for the Virgin Mary. And if you think about that, whom no man ever defiled. So the most expansive way to usurp the nurturing mother archetype was to state throughout most religions that there is no mother worthy of worshiping. And then they run off with their little dead man on a dead stick, which represents their obsession in keeping with our death cult that we live under right now. And this assassination of the nurturing mother archetype, which to me means abundance, love, and sovereignty, as opposed to the worship of the dark mother energies, which are scarcity, pain, and fear. And this is what has fragmented our spiritual core in a million subtle ways over the years, and has caused us to accept and embrace beliefs that are diametrically opposed to our inner knowing of divine truth and connectedness to source. Because the real Trinity is sound and light and consciousness. And that is from where all creation is birthed. And we are light and sound and the spirit of consciousness. So you see in this graphic, we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And of course, there's never a mother. Then we see the Trinity bomb, which was the first nuclear bomb ever to be created. And it was called Trinity. Just hold that. And I'm showing here the Trinity of the angelic human, which is our true Trinity that we're missing. Next. So speaking of the biggest psyops on Earth, we got to look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, because they positioned the father of destruction and death against the mother of creation, birth, and life as the victor. Now the victor was death. Now I'm become death, the destroyer of worlds. And that humanity could ever consciously evolve into a culture of life and creation again became shrouded in such a low frequency of death and aftershock. After that, we can still feel it today. So next. And taking a really close look at these three bombs. Now, we always think Hiroshima, Nagasaki, but there were three. So it is a trinity, and the first one was called a trinity, and there's a little spot at ground zero where it was blown up, and it's a little phallus like they love to do, their monument to Trinity. And it's really funny to me that the next bomb was called Little Boy, because that would be the sun, and the third one was called Fat Man. Now, Fat Man is a really weird name for a bomb, even though it was a fat little bomb. But in that word, we find the word Atman. And what I'm proposing to you is this wasn't as much a way to destroy Japan using these bombs as it was a satanic ritual, so that going forward, they had established the death cult in such a way that it was their death trinity. And the Atman is pure consciousness. It's their version of consciousness in direct opposition to prime creator source. And I further posit to you that this was also a scream out to any of the galactics looking to help or save Earth, to say, we're in charge now. This is a death cult, and we're going forward with war after war after war. If we can go to the next. And then they pulled out all the stops, used their Jap, you're next, we'll finish the job, death in the thousands of innocents by official sanction. But what you will notice is that in actual fact, this was not the worst bomb in history, as you may have thought. Next. See, there's this little known fact that they were the worst man-made damage in history, but they were just a distraction because there was a more heinous war crime that had been perpetrated on the Japanese 6 months before those bombs were dropped in March of 1945. And it was called Operation Meeting House. And it was the firebombing of Tokyo, and it was the single most deadliest air raid in history. And it was the midwife for that was General Curtis LeMay. And so they were able to create more damage than the Hiroshima Nagasaki nuclear bombs before they were even launched. So there was greater fire damage, greater loss of life, more than Dresden, Hamburg, here, you know, all of them. So that just goes to show that it was the Hiroshima Nagasaki was a satanic ritual. Can we go to the next one? Now we fast forward here to the 1990s, and we were getting to more aerial attacks. And to me, aerial attacks always signify some exterior work going on where there's a connection between the conduits on Earth and alien forces that are hostile to Earth. So by the 1900s, these harmful aerial attacks took the form of chemtrails. This is a silent assault, a covert one that nobody had heard about or knew about before. And the most interesting thing about this is it was called Operation Indigo Skyfold. So now you might be asking, what do chemtrails have to do with the mother archetype? Well, the angelic human woman gives birth to an undefiled race that has 24 or 48 strand DNA with the 6th strand active if they're born indigo. So from my observations, that means that this operation was devised specifically to poison the angelic indigos as part of a larger agenda to end the angelic bloodline race by harming their DNA. And we all know that seeding the skies is an old Anunnaki practice going back to when they stole gold on Earth, and then we became their slaves and they needed the gold for their planet, la, 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 la. We know about that. So now here they're just using the same old tricks. Next. And so now we know why they called it Operation Indigo, because the indigos are spiritual beings and angelic humans, and their presence here now on Earth, and I'm sure there'll be many people listening in that can relate to this, that we are here to reconstitute the blueprint and DNA of the whole planet and bring it back to its original form. And so the indigos are the ones that are known as the blueprinters. And the indigo type 2 have a 24-strand DNA template, which is why chemtrails are being sprayed 24/7 around the globe. And they've got other amazing gifts and things that I don't have time to go into here. If we can go to the next slide. And it's got so bad, and it's got to the point where obviously they're using chemtrails now to even microchip humans biologically. We've all heard of Morgellons and been into that. And we also know that the male and female indigos have their feminine and masculine sides in harmony and active. And you'll see as we go along that one of the greatest goals of the New World Order globalist infiltrators is to destroy the feminine frequency and override it toward their goal of post-humanism. Next. Just want to say another thing about the indigo children. They have a very threatening aspect to our adversaries in that they have this divine human design, and they have retained their original, beautiful, ancient, unsullied code, gene code. And so that's what's being assaulted. And that is why they're continually trying to manipulate our DNA. Go to the next, please. And just one more thing about the indigos too. In the last 25 years, more people have assembled all three strands and are now assembling their fourth strand of DNA, and many have the fifth assembled too. So if you're an indigo, you also have the sixth activated and assembled. So when you're in that state of having that sixth strand activated, then you're much more aware of yourself and source and the unified relationship between them. So all our adversaries ever wanted to do was keep us asleep enough to control us. So we throw all their plans out of whack. And just to let you know how serious this is, I'll let you know that the indigos were originally placed as potential on Earth back 800,000 years ago. And this was in the third seeding of human souls. But that's when the fifth and sixth frequencies were not yet active, because they could have blown the Earth's grid with their power. So indigo ancestral energies are running through Earth's grid right now. I see. Oh, there we are. Can we go to the next slide, please? Did you miss something? You probably didn't miss much. So tens of thousands of years ago, it was deemed necessary by these lesser controlling species to engineer human DNA so that angelic humans would evolve away from naturally occurring balance of the essential divine masculine and feminine within each and every one of us. Because when you have that, you have unity consciousness. And unity consciousness is attainable. Next slide, please. So you want to know how paranoid they are about indigos? They even removed the color indigo from the pride flag. And this is probably around about the time, and this was in 1978. And we all know now that they've absolutely usurped pride altogether. I know many gay friends who just look in horror at this normalization of pedophilia, things like that, using their banner. They originated. In the beginning, it was all about joy and love and celebration. And it's turned a corner into some very, very dark areas, especially that of transgenderism. Next slide, please. And the other thing it does on the side, which saddens me a lot, is it might all be joy and fun, but it's actually a very misogynistic thing, these drag queens, because they turn women into these hideous cartoon characters for one. Next slide. And they've been doing this for a long, long time. In the 1500s, you could see in the art that they had kind of like a drag queen look going on. And this brings it all the way up to the future, where we have Conchita Wurst, who is now, it's called gender conforming in this day and age. So next slide. And then in art, they made damn sure that there was this MK Ultra visual project going on with especially women. You can even see the visual desecration of the feminine visage and this fragmentation and splitting of the mind. That Picasso on the right, it even has a wedge right in its head, which it doesn't get more clearer than that as to what they were trying to do. Next, please. Now we're moving into the era of when first celebrities are starting to give their stamp of approval to transgenderism. And then the doctors come along and spell the name of the condition. And so the indigos are connected to the universal mother and father of the cosmos, but the transgender community is fixated on superficial outward appearances that cannot go beyond the physical body. And therefore we are merging with higher dimensions, but people who go into this transgender surgery thing are getting cut off from source by this inversion process of who we really are. Because the handrails of our perfectly gender balanced chemical DNA ladder was designed to form the stairway up to heaven for our ascension. So basically they're denying themselves the joy of ever being able to ascend, and they're descending, but they don't know it. And I want to just put out a lot of love and embrace any transgenders here too. I have nothing against transgenders because I absolutely understand how this psychological operation has lured in children and made this possible. So please go to the next slide. And how they've used especially Hollywood porns to accelerate the annihilation of the divine masculine and feminine. And no one talks about the fact that quite a while ago, that Shiloh, the daughter of Brad Pitt, decided he wanted to be a boy and everyone had to call him John. But today, she's back to being Shiloh, but nobody talks about that anymore. They keep going with the ones that have fully transitioned, had all these surgeries and the genital mutilation, which I'm not even going to go into on here, but it doesn't work and it's not right. And we all know that. We can pretend as much as we like that you can just swap genitalia by sewing a few knots here and there, but it's not right and it's not fair to these people.
Correct.
Next, please. So the bottom of the pit of this transgenderism comes here with this person who wants to create a baby with the sole intent of killing that baby. So he wants to have a uterus and ovary transplant to get pregnant and abort a child. So that just tells you everything of what direction that's going in. And when you get to that point, what you're doing is you're handing over biological operations to the system that then can make the nurturing mother archetype null and void, because everything is then done outside of the woman, the womb. Next, please. So then obviously also the next step after this is that now we declare that men can be women and give birth and breastfeed. So this is a prototype or metaphor for the ability of these Illuminati hybrid humans to claim that one of their gods, Baphomet, can give birth to their demonic bloodline. So here we have it. Next, please. How am I doing for time? Let's see, 1:41.
This is great. Crack on. This is don't stop this.
Oh, okay. So here we go with the Baphomet wives, because men have been posing as women for centuries. So this is the usurping of the nurturing mother archetype, full blown. And it's, you know, today we might be doing facial feminine surgeries and computerized airbrushing enhancements. So it's really hard to determine the sex today. But back then you could really get a handle on it. And these are some of the examples throughout history.
Well, I've got to take a little bit of umbrage here. I know Princess Victoria of Sweden. I've spent time with her in the flesh many, many years ago when she was a young princess. And she was determinedly not a male when she was in a teenager and in her early 20s. I don't know about the others. Princess Caroline of Monaco, that's a curious one for me. But some of these other grotesqueries, certainly I would raise the question about their gender. But I'm a little bit concerned about that one with Victoria. I'm not quite sure where that particular notion stems from.
Thank you, Sasha. It's very, very hard to prove these things, and it's easy to get some of them wrong. So I appreciate you standing up and saying that.
Thank you.
And I'm also very unsure of many. And you got to know the hours I spent looking at the full body, the hands compared to the head, the width of the shoulders. Honestly, I really did spend a long time making sure that I got it right. So thank you. So go to the next one. You'll see I call them All the President's Men. And here again, I could be wrong, but I've got good backup proof. So we've got Dolly Madison. We've got Martha Washington, Margaret Taylor. These are all wives of presidents. And then I'm going to fast forward up to today. I suppose Sasha's probably had tea with Pat Nixon. And we all know the story of Michelle Obama. Okay, so I'm not going to try to prove that one. There's even a scar on her arm that shows, or his arm. So these are the so-called leaders of the free world, and they've all got their Baphomet trannies as wives. And to me, it's like they just pretend to sleep with the devil himself. So let's go to the next one. And here's your ultimate proof. And I independently found this video myself and recorded it off of a newsreel myself. And after I threw it all around all over Twitter, I got banned from Twitter, never to return. So let's blast it. So
I mean,
you can.
I don't know if that was a cod piece that Jacinda Ardern was wearing, or if she just had a kind of 1970s bush under there. But I mean, it's either way, it's certainly a curiosity. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And it started a long time ago. Behind the charade of this populist pronoun movement that we have today, he, she, them, us, is the reality of an attempt by these invaders of this earth who have this inversion problem to sexualize our very identities on the most superficial level possible, so that we would identify with the flesh alone and forget the ethereal body that connects to prime creator source. They had to make sex about science so that it would move from being highly spiritual to functional, problematic, and profitable. So it was fast-tracked after the First World War. And that's Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, who was actually one of those remnant Khazarians who was an Ashkenazi, and they influenced the cultural, social, and everything life of Europe after they came flooding in from Khazaria. So it's that.
So just narrow that down, if you don't mind. That was a uniquely perfidious element or pernicious element sequestered within the Ashkenazi clique that was, connected to the Sabbatean hand. Because we got to be very mindful that we don't cast aspersion over the greater Ashkenazi family. But that definitely the Khazarian element, the pernicious, nefarious element, was sequestering itself within the body politic of the Ashkenazi family, and that kind of led to much of what we see today playing out still within the atom seed of the global transnational cabal.
Absolutely. But the motivation was to start back then was to start establishing homosexuality as a norm,
Yeah,
which for them would bolster depopulation methodologies and eventually lead to transgenderism. So, you know, they had to have the steps. So this was the beginning of those steps to reach the point to where we are now.
Let's move it on a little bit quicker. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to skip the mother. Well, the mother archetype. Another reason. What she does is she rebirths, which she feeds the children with love and her own breast milk, and the corporate cult invaders drain the blood of terrorized children and drink it, and that's the major difference. And then I've got, as you go forward, Christy, 1, 2, 3, we've got documentation about adrenochrome businesses and the lives of the children and how long they've had them and all sorts of things connected to that, until we get to the point where, no, if you can just go back one, they're trying to normalize the drinking of young human blood. And here's a startup company that's offering young blood transfusions to rejuvenate the body. So if you think adrenochrome is a stretch, now they're openly selling young blood. Next, please. And here's Sasha's favorite hero, Mother Teresa, who obviously was a man and connected to Hillary Clinton, who went to visit her. And she had established, she operated 517 missions in over 100 countries, serving the poorest of the poor. And basically, people who worked with her just said she glamorized human misery for profit. So they have Mother Teresa now, who I have heard again and again and again, and I keep double checking it. So I'll say it with a little bit of, I don't know for sure, but they say she is a man. And more than that,
I can tell you that the infant mortality in her orphanages was 400% over the median average in India for the duration of her heinous existence. And another thing, when she died, a number of her trustees came forward and attested that she died with the Swiss codes to the banks. So this woman was, I mean, I dare say the Swiss codes were held by her comptrollers in the Vatican, but the point being that this venal crone masquerading as being the saintly Magdalene for the duration of her life, co-opting that archetype and harnessing and harvesting the plasma of billions, hundreds of millions of Catholics and good people around the world who believed in the mythos. Even Princess Diana, God bless her, fell victim to that mythos. Many of us did back in the day. It was very difficult in the 70s, 80s, and 90s to move against that commonly accepted narrative that this old crone was a saintly creature, because that was half a century of systemic propaganda making out that she was walking barefooted amongst the sullied Indian children, not realizing that she was, without any question of doubts, at the epicenter of trafficking, harvesting, trafficking operation. And people who went to the orphanages to meet her there often went away in disgust and outrage, saying that this woman became so calcified in her own mythos that at the end she was quite openly saying that no, we don't give painkillers to mothers and children who are in agony, because the sufferance is a testament to the sufferance of the Christ, and sufferance is a good thing. You know, it's that kind of perversion kicked in, but quite venal in her way. Thank you.
So the next woman I'm going to tell you that is a man, actually, that you probably never heard of, is Georgia Tan. And you can tell by her large head, protruding brow, all these various indicators. Now, this is what I want. I'm putting her up here because I want to show you how this mantle of the nurturing mother was stolen and used by men to further their agenda because they knew that people would trust them. And this woman kidnapped and sold 5,000 infants to wealthy Americans. And you probably never heard of her. So let's go to the next one. So now what's happening, this same cloak of the nurturing mother archetype is being put on by politicians. And they look very nice and very sweet. But the thing is, they're imposters of women. So you get the false sense of this softer side of caring often when these people come forward. Let's go to the next one. Here's the two biggest cartoon characters of the political club that are transgender and whatever they are. And let's go to the next one. And we've got the problem of the movie industry cashing in on this now, and we're beginning to decipher these psyops en masse. And one of the most effective methods of propaganda of all time, as you know, is the movies. So through the gateway of Hollywood come many, many more. And now they're open about it. The difference was before when it was people like Nicole Kidman or Julia Roberts. You didn't know for sure. It was covert. But now today, they're all big stars. And here we are at Victoria's Secret. Oh, you jumped ahead of me, Christy. I'm sorry. And we all know the secret of Victoria's Secret is that they're all men. And we've got video company with 200 million viewers or something like that using their video games as a transhumanist marketing tool, showing the scars from the breast surgery and all the things you need to do to become transhumanist. And next, please, is we have this massive influx of these transgender clinics all over the country. So mass marketing, and you just walk in nearby, you can get it done as soon as you want. Next, please. We've got the surgeons themselves, very questionable. The guy on the left, who I don't know if it's a man or a woman, over 4,000 gender-affirming surgeries under his belt. So you can imagine the rate at which this is going on. And we'll go to the next one. And then, of course, I couldn't not get through this without mentioning Bill Gates, master of the genetic mutation of the angelic human race, with his Baphomet sidekick tranny ex-wife. And so we know now at this time that many angelic babies seeded with the original God code are entering our realm to help us ascend. So we've got the likes of Gates wanting to cut this evolutionary progress off at the knees by killing as many babies and children as possible before they mature and threaten their new world order. And then one of their greatest tricks, too, is to get the sweetest little old ladies in the world to be part of their agenda, especially 2030 agenda. And here's Dame Commander Jane Goodall at the World Economic Forum, another little trick. And then, so next slide, please. We're going to go from the denial of gender. As I said earlier, it's just one small step toward denying humanness and going toward transhumanism. So next, then we've got our Khazarian mafia interference. This is what Ashiana Dean said, a quote, "The progressive orchestration of denying sacred knowledge to the masses and falsifying the human historical record while promoting extensive overbreeding and overpopulation through historical forced interbreeding, distorted spiritual teachings, and manipulative science has not occurred haphazardly or by accident. These things have occurred and are still occurring by meticulous, contrived design carried out over many generations since 250,000 BC by Illuminati human hybrid races following the directives of their off-planet interdimensional extraterrestrial elder kin.
Very good.
So,
Okay.
are we done? Would you like me to end there,
We
Sasha?
need to try and wrap this up. I need to bring Ilana in, and Dan's joined us. By the grace of God, he's with us. So yeah, we need to kick off with the panel shortly.
Okay, great. What I'll do is I'll just go to the last slide and read one closing paragraph. Our once lost and disembodied souls are rearranging the patterns of creation as sovereign beings now. It's actually the next slide, Christy. The upshift in frequency is dissolving the Luciferian energy signature and shielding artificial and organoid intelligence penetration tactics. We are discarding AI and reuniting with our far superior creative currency capacities. And this is what is going to deliver us our cosmic keys, which can unlock portals to ever higher dimensions where the power of our collective soul family can reunite to return love as the overarching song of this realm. So now that we know exactly what psychological operations have been used against us, we can overcome them and move seamlessly into the new earth paradigm. Thank you very much.
Absolutely beautiful. Beautifully done. Thank you, Jane. Really, really appreciate that. Friends, Dan Willis. Dan, a U.S. Navy veteran, testified about extraterrestrial phenomena at the National Press Club in 2001. His post-military work with Werner von Braun at Fairchild Industries and his investigative research into ancient advanced technology and geomancy offers unique insights. He's a remarkable human being, and I made great mention of him last night at my presentation at Nevada City here, and a number of people also quite amazed at the work that this man has done. I think he's been in the closet for far too long. Personally, just delighted that he's with us again at Lazarus Symposium. Dan, happy to see you. You'll need to unmute your microphone.
Delighted once again to join you, Sasha. At my favorite subjects, PsyOps. Jane, you did an awesome job. That was incredible, your presentation. Yeah, very honored to join you again. I'm going to add one little PsyOp here at the end.
The power is back on. We lost you early today.
Oh, I'm in the middle of a storm. The internet connectivity is going in and out.
Well, we're waiting for a blizzard here in Nevada City. We're told it's going to be arriving any minute now. So I might go dark. Who knows? Okay, good. Thanks, Dan, for joining us. Thank you, Jane, for that fantastic presentation. Ilana, I know you also have a short presentation. I want to give you the floor now.
How long do you think I have, Sasha?
As long as you need is the answer.
Okay, all right. So, Christy, did you get the slideshow to work? Here she goes. That's good. Now, what I'm showing is just something I threw together to just give you an idea of how my life has gone. I would say that I am most known for my books on geoengineering, and I've been doing that for 13 years, I guess going on 14 now. And that has proven to be much more complex and with many more layers than I originally thought when I lived in New Mexico and was friends with Clifford Carnicom, the independent scientist who was the only scientist going public on the internet with what he was finding was coming down from the chemical trails that we call chemtrails. During that time, it was sort of sinking in slowly. You've probably all been through this process of knowledge where it just sort of has to sink in. And being a longtime student of Rudolf Steiner and a trained Waldorf teacher that I helped start 4 schools here in Washington State, I know something about seeping in for higher knowledge, for a more complex knowledge level. And what you've been told geoengineering is very different from what it is. And I had spent already 10 years on MK Ultra. I didn't know this at the time, but I think that probably the reason that I was so taken with studying the technology of how the CIA, with their paperclip Nazi friends, had produced a style of mind control. I mean, we've had mind control for thousands of years, of the powerful over the weak, but this was very high tech. This had a lot to do with machines and drugs, and then of course the realization that trauma was the third ingredient that would produce a very long-lasting mind control with the occasional tune-up now and then. At that time, that MK Ultra was high-tech in the clinic, in the hospital setting, in the military base setting, and it was a different creature than we have today. MK Ultra was, we went to the church committee in 73 and 7 through 75, and it was said that MK Ultra had ended. That was what the CIA said. Meanwhile, many of the files were supposedly burned, and it was a done deal. It was in the past. It was not something to worry about. A lot of people bought that story, but those who realized what mind control can give to people as per power knew that there was no way that it would have been dropped just because of public pressure. All that happened then is the lies were amped up. So regarding the lies, we could go back that slide now, Christy, sorry. The first slide I have is on what's called MISO. And I wanted you to know that this is not the soup. This is a military program that has taken over the PSYOPs name nomenclature for psychological operations that are mostly perpetrated on the public, not on foreign enemies. Oh, Christy, did you hear me about that? Or is she gone?
Christy's here.
Is the slideshow working, Christy?
Yeah, I believe
it is. I'm sorry, I don't see it. That's probably my fault in some way. This is not my forte. So notice the military information support and operations. This had to do with then President Obama's change in the 1948, I think it was, Smith-Mundt Act. And it has to do with propaganda. Now, the Smith-Mundt Act was our protection in America during the Cold War, which was quite new then, regarding propaganda, that we would not be propagandized by our own government. That now has been changed, and it is a done deal that propaganda, which includes lies, can be perpetrated on the American public. And that's what we've been seeing, is that for example, the MK Ultra, which is basically a mind control technology, is now, and it's partially electronic, even in the beginning, but now it's fully electronic. So we have a controlled media, mainstream media that constantly lies and can invert people's realities. All of this has to do with the discoveries of power that MK Ultra really laid bare to those who seek power. And so we need to remember that, MISO, and you can read about it, the Smith-Mundt Act.
Yeah.
And realize that we're all subject to this now, and that has to do with targeting. We're being targeted by propaganda, disinformation, lies, and so to me, for my path, what serves me for that to be able to unlock all the lies and subterfuge as I write these books that I'm hoping are true, are as close to truth as I can get, is the work I've done in Rudolf Steiner, where he's very, very intent on thinking, the thinking apparatus of the human
Yes.
being, not just the brain, but the consciousness that goes into thinking. And so to be able to unlock technologies that are beyond for example, my master's degree, they are not in science and technology, because this technology is really new, not the media so much, but the technology that we talk about we refer to chemtrails, we refer to HAARP, we refer to these things that we've had bandied about for about the last decade or more, but we don't really understand how they work. And as you know, when you're trying to save yourself and your culture, and you're trying to have some modicum of freedom in your life, the more you understand how technologies are being used against you, the more you can protect yourself. And so that's why I've been so dedicated to this, is I've slowly realized over writing, my fourth book is now going to come out with Inner Traditions. I had no idea I'd be writing 4 books on geoengineering. I had no idea it was that complex. But each book unlocked the next layer, the next layer, the next layer. And so that's why I have this. Now, this that you're seeing here, this is the Clifford Carnicom came up with this. And this is a list of what geoengineering is really up to. You hear it as being primarily to counter climate change or global warming. And that's simply the cover story, because this is a massive PSYOP. This is a weapon program that is extraordinary. And I would say that it is greater than the nuclear bomb because it can be moved around at will. It now has taken over all the weather. All the weather is engineered now. And then it has these 6 other operations. And those have to do with being able to do chemical and electromagnetic experiments in our atmosphere, because since 2013, our atmosphere has been siphoning off ions from the ionosphere, because we totally control the ionosphere now. And the ionosphere starts out about 22 miles above us and goes out all the way to the magnetosphere, a couple hundred miles beyond that, and then out into space with the magnetosphere, which is very large. So this is a serious weapon system, and it's sold to the public, which pays for a lot of it, by means of making it sound like it's helping us with the weather, that our cars are producing carbons, etc. The whole story is just paper mache once you get through it and you realize what else is going on. So there's the weather, there's the chemicals and electromagnetics, there's the formation of what you could call terraforming. We generally relate that to off-planet intelligences doing that, but I would say that these are very on-planet intelligences doing terraforming, Maui being an example, that geoengineered fires are now run from space. And, I go through all that in the books, and I do presentations on it. So just to give you an idea of how it works, and then there are the directed energy weapons. This is one, this is HAARP. This is the high frequency active auroral research project up in Gakona, Alaska. acres and acres of phased array antennas that can all be directed and to target various targets that are decided upon. And that makes it an earth weapon, but it also is that the HARP was able to, is the prime mover of being able to take over to take over the idea of using the ionosphere to ionize our atmosphere. And that's what's going on. We now have an atmosphere which is exceedingly electrical, exceedingly warming, and that thus the global warming that is constantly being fed and assuaged by the materials that we call chemtrails. Those are all nanotechnology. Most of them, a lot of them are nanoparticles, but most are nanotech now. So many things are going on there. The synthetic biology is involved in that. We are being barraged from space by these technical ionospheric heaters. HARP is certainly not the only one in the world. You can go. We saw a picture of HARP there, and I'll just whip through. Now this, if somebody could read that, because I don't, unless
the ability of the HARP Space Lab rocket combination to deliver very large amounts of energy comparable to a nuclear bomb anywhere on Earth via laser and particle beams is frightening, close quote. That's Rosalie Bertell, 1929 to 2012, the epidemiologist specializing in ionized radiation, author of Planet Earth, the Latest Weapon of War, a critical study into the military and the environment.
Yes, and Rosalie was the very first. She was a gray nun, and she was the first to actually write a book about planet Earth as weapon. So I highly recommend that. A new version has come out from Claudia von Werloff in Germany. So then we already heard about this from Jane. These are the chemtrails. These are not contrails. Then if we looked at it and really examined how all of this is being electromagnetically maneuvered from space and from the Earth, we would see that this is all a manipulation of our own resonance. And we are the most resonant creature probably on Earth. I mean, maybe we vie with fish in the water, because water is highly conductive. But we see many times clouds that look like this, with this sort of the shelving that goes on. And this is when
we're not seeing anything there, Christy. We're not seeing anything. What is that image?
Oh, Christy, you're not seeing it?
Well, there's some bizarre little icon there, but it doesn't look like an image of anything.
I wonder if it's because I'm looking at
now we're looking at a aeroplane with the kind of rainbow.
Okay, then the next one, Chrissy. So all of these particulates coming out of the airplane can be hit with electromagnetics, so that they can change the frequency. And frequency, as we know, Tesla told us, if you want to understand the universe, you have to understand frequency and vibration. And that's sort of what happens to us. Christy, can you change it to the next one? Yeah, and this is the next one. There it is. And there it is, if playing table tennis, or if you can see below where I can't, this is what we're getting hit with, is frequencies from space. Yeah. And one of the primary baseline frequencies we're being hit with is actually 4 hertz. I mean, that sounds like peanuts when we're dealing with 5G and 6G frequencies, but it really isn't, because it's changing our nervous system. And what I'm positing in these books that I write now, the last book, Geoengineered Transhumanism, and the present book, The Geoengineered Transhuman, put out by Inner Traditions, is that this is part of the transhuman shift that is going on right now.
Yeah.
Is we are being hit from space, not just in the arm, not just the jabs in the arm, and the various nanosensors that are everywhere. We're breathing them in, they're everywhere. And they're delivering lots of big data to big supercomputers, but that we're being hit from above as well. The next slide. And
He who
thanks.
controls the electromagnetic spectrum on Earth controls the living things on the surface of the planet. Jack Cruz, MD, March 31st, 2017.
Yes, and this is true in spades. And so the electromagnetics, as you know, are carefully controlled. This is all part of, it may not be nuclear energy and the nuclear brotherhood, but it is definitely controlled by the IEEE. And through the IEEE, those titans behind them with all the money and the plans for the New World Order. Next. Now, what is that one saying? Let's see.
It says from molecular biology to digital bioengineering. What has happened is that genetics has become a branch of information technology. It is pure information. It's digital information. It's precisely the kind of information that can be translated digit for digit, byte for byte into any other kind of information and translated back again. This is a major revolution. I suppose it's probably the major revolution in the whole history of our understanding of ourselves. And that's Richard Dawkins from Evolutionary Biologist.
Thank you so much, Jane. All right, so now I have my computer where I need it, and next. And what I just said is I can't stress it enough. Molecular biology is now being converted into digital biology. And what that means is that if the ones who control the synthetic biology that is being foisted upon us as in vivo test tubes, if they know the frequency of any particular element from the periodic table or even from their compounds, they can transmit that frequency by means of electromagnetism, and you will pick it up. And here is where I differ from what a lot of people are saying, so I'll just say it here. Regarding shedding, shedding is not viral. It is not being moved from one person to another by means of molecular biology. It is entirely through the digital biology frequencies being transmitted by 5G and 6G systems into the person who perhaps has been vaccinated. It can also be transferred to those who have not been vaccinated. So the shedding is more along the lines of electromagnetics than molecules.
Break this down a little bit more, please. Could you break this down a little bit more? Are you saying that in the similar vein to what the late great Dr. Gariev in Russia was speaking to with the linguistic wave genetics, that light or frequency or vibration is a carrier of the thing that is being transposed from point A to point B? Is that what we're saying?
That's what we're saying. Could we go back to that, Christy, back to that slide with the colorful rainbow that's showing where we don't? This is our visible range, right? This is all we see. And I think it's around 10 to the negative 9th. But all of this, all the way through infrared to microwaves to radio waves, and all the way from UV to X-rays and gamma rays. We can't see any of that, but we have instruments now that can. And so we, the people, are sort of subject to the narrative that we're fed by those who control the technology. It has ever been thus.
Right.
And so now they can use, say you have long COVID, I think they're calling it. What could that possibly be? Well, it could be, as many more and more doctors are realizing, radiation sickness from the 5G and 6G systems that are pulsing this frequency out into perhaps a geographic area, perhaps an ethnic group, perhaps individuals. Certainly go into a hospital, which is completely wired for 5G and 6G, by the way. This is a smart hospital now. And you're basically in the jaws of the dragon, which can breathe fire on you and give you whatever frequency disease they choose.
Yeah.
Ebola, any type of illness can be triggered by means of electromagnetics. And this is why, yes, electromagnetics is complicated. And certainly I'm never going to be an electrician, but you can learn the rudiments of it and see how it works with frequencies. Of course, I think that those who have the frequencies are now quite powerful. It was the same in MK Ultra. If you had the frequencies of an MK Ultra slave who you were going to interact with, all you had to do was have the trigger words or the code or the frequency, and you could control that slave. So I think we're looking at that happening now on a cultural level, on a societal level. And just remember that even though we have this small electromagnetic aperture into the world, it looks very limiting. It keeps us from getting lost in the world, in a sense, if it were greater. But now we have to develop our spiritual consciousness, our ability from inside our human type that we are, as far as a piece of the divine, and that in itself will help us. Sometimes I curse the fact that we can't see beyond this small aperture, because then, you know how they say, seeing is believing. Most people will not believe what they can't see. Again, the need here for thinking and the capability of reading and studying in order to understand these technologies. Okay, next slide. Here's some environmental fibers that Clifford Carnicom was finding many years ago. These are basically polymers, but what are they used for? That was the question that was always on our minds. Next. This is looking into the blood or fluids. I remember the first time I was looking over Clifford's shoulder, the independent scientist who was working on all of this, and saw some sort of creature sucking the iron out of my red blood cells. It was definitely a wake-up call. Next. Here's a much closer look at some of these fibers. And these are falling, yes, from the sky, but they are also in the serums that were put into people's bodies. Next. Here's a filament, looks very much like a Morgellons filament. Morgellons was discovered years ago with microscope, but it was probably one of the very first pathogens that was used that is now flooding our blood. Next. This is from Harry Rhodes. He's a great expert in ways to counter chemtrails via the ability of plasma and ether to, both of which are life-loving, to take the clouds from over our homes. He is showing a Morgellons situation, but he's also showing, notice he says self-replicating nanowires. there are there's various wires, there's various polymers that are being used and are very highly developed in the lab and then delivered via chemical trails. They're in the water system, they're in the foods, particularly the GMO foods. And so we need to really know about these things just to make it so that we can find our way through. Next. This is by David Nixon. I'm in a live blood analysis seminar. I go every other Saturday and spend several hours looking at what people have discovered to be in the blood of vaccinated and unvaccinated. Next. Many of these look like machines. Many of these look very futuristic. This is synthetic biology that we're looking at. Next. This is a very cool shot. This is from Carl C's Substack. He took this picture of what's in some of the blood that he's looking at. So this light and all of these glimmering little guys here.
Starlink.
These are all quantum dots, it appears.
Wow.
And they may also be Luciferase, which is a name that was given to them a long time ago for Lucifer. Next. This is from the New Zealand's Pfizer Comirnaty is what they call the serum there. And this is kind of what I'm on now, is the under the microscope, we're seeing a lot of these right-angled structures that are being made and are either being used in inoculations or are coming down with the chemical trails.
Is this circuitry? Are we looking at circuit boards?
Yeah, we're looking at a circuit board. There are many computer parts that are now in our blood that you have to know that this vaccination schedule that we had in 2020 was moving into the next phase of what's been being delivered for the last 25 years by aerosol. And this includes, the reason for that is the linchpin of the entire system of transhumanism, of this particular approach to transhumanism, has to do with the inoculations that we're putting into the human body, not just graphene oxide, which is very important, not just hydrogel, which is very important, not just quantum dots, but also that the software, hardware needed to run the human body like a machine remotely. This would not entail necessarily the person being able to access that. No, this will be done remotely by the masters of the universe, as they like to think of themselves. And we're seeing a lot of that. And that isn't all. So let's go to the next slide. This is a picture of how your body can be controlled. I think we're calling this the Wireless Body Area Network, the WBAN now, through the excellent, most amazing work by a woman named Sabrina Wallace on the internet, if you can possibly see what she's bringing. She is a former MK Ultra survivor who was trained early as a very small child, because she's genius level, in all of the things that she's bringing to you, because she does not want this to happen to us. And so here you see the computer over to the right. You see one of the towers. You see drones up above. You see all of these things are now connecting to each other in a network. And part of that network is your body. Your body is electrical, and it is part of the system. We are all plugged in now, whether we try to protect ourselves, whether we're living out in the middle of a rural area, we are all plugged into what I called in a book before on the Under an Ionized Sky, from space fence to was the space fence. I use that term, and that's a Lockheed Martin term because they own all the patents for the space fence. So we're held in a network, and we're part of the network.
And Elena, this story keys very deftly into the digital twin scenario.
Absolutely.
Of all of this metadata surveillance and data gathering that's gone on certainly for the last century, but in recent decades, it's become compressed into the quantum, and with supercomputation and AI algorithms now doing the data harvesting, compositing Elena Danaan or Dan Willis or Jane Evershed or Sasha Stone in the IBM basement, a composite of all the information that's gathered on us. It's a terrifying prospect that the AI Sasha Stone digital twin is the one actually that is given the true value and is now able to function in to some capacity in the world. And ultimately, the blood and bones, flesh and blood human being strapped to an armchair in a tightly controlled apartment in a smart city becomes the prisoner in point of fact.
Yes, we are all basically nodes now, and our digital twin will, when we are all transferred into the internet, which is a very different creature from the internet you believe in now, which would be the singularity. We will be we will not be able to at all have the self-consciousness. You see, I'm trying to protect the self-consciousness. We are spiritual beings. We can think about our thinking. We can think about ourselves. We have these intimate moments with our soul. I do not want a time when I am living in an internet and I am being, my digital twin is somewhere else in some big machine somewhere that is now transferring data into my mind and taking all my soul's privacy. I simply do not want that for me, for anyone, for the future of children here now. So to me, I'm very humble in this. I am following one foot in front of the other, in front of the other. I make no leaps of faith that I'm ascending or that any of that. I just can't go there. I'm too busy laying out these steps they have taken in order to control us without our knowledge. Will we know our own thoughts? Will we know our own feelings? I have people writing me now who say, I'm having terrible thoughts. Are they mine?
Yeah.
Well, I can't decide that. That's why I'm trying to teach people how to discern truth from lies, reality from unreality. Okay, next slide.
Very good.
We
need to speed it up a little bit here.
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Gotcha.
This is take a note on this. It's called, I can't read that up there.
So it says
systematic
here,
of the nano-red intracorporeal.
Yes.
This will be valuable to you. This gives you a list of all the stuff that is now in your either vaccinated or non-vaccinated body from the inoculations and from what's coming down from space. This is the idea. This will all translate, is the hope of the bad guys, the synthetic biology bad guys. This will all translate into a very different body than the natural one that you have now. But this list might be valuable to you, so I recommend you pay attention to that. Next. Now this, Sasha, you've seen this before when I told you about that book about the vaccinations.
Yes.
And this is a very peculiar thing. The book is here. We had the author, Thomas Mayer, on.
Yeah.
COVID vaccines from a spiritual perspective, consequences for the soul and spirit. and for life after death. These are just, now we can go back to the slides. Thank you. Here is, if I were looking at the human soul, we often think of it as sort of maybe a puffy, cloudy thing or whatever. But what if the soul has parts, has its own components from a spiritual level? So we have the higher I, that would be the highest self. Behind here with the yellow is the angel, our angel that protects us from lifetime to lifetime. I'm using a sort of Rudolf Steiner old classical format here for talking about the soul. And we have all of the I. The I is the who you are this lifetime. Yeah. You are not the same person you were last time. You're here now. You have the etheric body, which is your body of health and your body of memory. You have a doppelganger that enters you at birth, which provides you with the electromagnetic network that you need in your body, network from a natural way. And it's sort of the devil in you, living in you, that you have to deal with at times. All this is someone whose soul is all together, and this is all nice and balanced. The doppelganger is not inside the body. You have the angel behind you. Next slide. This is what Thomas Mayer and the 50 people, clairvoyants, who work with him to help people who have side effects, as they're called, from the 2020 to 2023 inoculations. This is what happens to the soul after that. And people are having mental problems. You've probably met relatives or people you know that have changed in some drastic way or some way you don't recognize. Whatever it is, this is a possibility, is that the soul itself is being affected by this technology that would include not just what's going into the arm or being breathed from space, but the electromagnetics that is used to conduct the weather, all the electromagnetics that you're constantly have waves going through your body from. All of this technology that we are not accustomed to, that we are not evolved to handle, is affecting our soul. So don't do the Western thing of the spiritual is over here and the physical is over here. No, exactly. That's not what's happening.
Thank you.
And I think that was the last slide, wasn't it? Yes.
Wonderful stuff. That was fantastic. Thank you. You know, one wonders, I want to give the floor to Dan Willis. We need to hear from him. But I wonder, this luciferic false light matrix digitization, artificialization of sentience and of that which is organic and innate to this world, that entire panoply of anti-creation that we're facing, one wonders if that is all about trying to animate the doppelganger in us and give the doppelganger a preeminence. Does that ring with you?
Yep, that rings, because this era, says Rudolf Steiner, this is Ahriman's time.
Right.
And he splits evil into two things: the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic. The Ahrimanic is from the Persians, and it basically means constrictive, dark, heavy, all the opposite of what we think of as spiritual. Whereas the Luciferic has to do with expansion, high ideas. The point is, in Steiner land, is to keep the two in balance. But if the doppelganger, as you saw in that one post-vax, if it then gets inside the body, well, you got problems. You got big problems, and that would include illness.
Right. Dan, your reflections and thoughts on that presentation that you called out.
Oh, fantastic presentation, Elena. It's interesting. A clairvoyant friend of mine said that she noticed that people who been injected, that she can't see the crown chakra anymore. It's kind of And it's such a criminal, treasonous act that Obama did for the NDAA of 2013 to lie to the American people using propaganda.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, I worked with Dr. Robert Beck on brainwave entrainment and all this. I have a whole background in it, but we don't have time to discuss all that. But your presentation was very in depth and very important to expose these criminals of humanity.
Thank
Very
you.
good. So, Dan, let's just run through here some of the notes of the top 10 PSYOPs. The notes I've got here: 1, safe and effective propaganda. The chilling depopulation agendas hidden behind the veneer of COVID bioweaponry, marketed as safe and effective. The fear of disease was used as a tool to control populations. The safe and effective propaganda. 2, overpopulation exhausts resources. Building from the discussion on depopulation, we segue into the myth of overpopulation, debunking the notion that our planet's resources are stretched thin due to excessive population growth. I mean, presumably that is the biggest
Sasha?
Somebody took him
We
away.
lost you.
no. I'm back. That was very weird. Everything just went
That
dark.
was weird.
Yeah, he said, one wonders if the biggest contemporaneous PSYOP isn't just that, about leading the entirety of humanity through a grotesque propaganda campaign, through obviously mainstream media, academia, and kind of social normalization of this idea that we are too many, and that we are the parasite, that we are the problem, when it's the polar opposite. So what are your thoughts, Dan, on that piece is the essential propaganda piece? The humans should feel themselves to be degraded, undignified, venal creatures that have no place in God's creation, and we should self-orchestrate our own auto-destruct and fall upon our sword and reduce our own population from a purported 8 billion to 500 million, or whatever it is that is intended. But isn't that really the big PSYOP, degrading our entire existence from being innately affirmative, expansive, and creative, and abundant and prosperous, into being the other?
Well, say our last exciting episode, we were going to just skip that. I was going to go into PSYOP 11 because of time constraints, but I'll comment on that. And that, our planet's been technologically hijacked. We have the ability to make the deserts flourish, enough food for everybody. There's technology to be able to, have habitats all over the planet. And off planet as well. So, the whole overpopulation situation is artificially created because of the lack of technology that has been suppressed. But if you like, I can go into PSYOP number 11.
Well, I want to do that, but first, what I want to do is just skirt through number 3, water scarcity. Continue the theme of resource scarcity. The narrative of water shortage being a principal one. Here we talk about, this is the concept of primary water, untapped resource of limitless water hidden beneath the earth's crust, challenging the widespread belief in inevitable water scarcity. So classic scarcity economics issues out of this. Number 4, agriculture requires fertilizer and pesticides. So this egregious notion that we need to artificially pump up nature to do nature's own bidding, shifting focus to agriculture, we expose the corporate-driven narratives that farming is impossible without fertilizers and pesticides, which of course is systemic and endemic poisoning. Number 5, climate change is a human problem. So that's, number 5, big PSYOP, transitioning the controversial topic of so-called climate change, challenging the dominant narrative about the extent of human, forgive me, I've lost my notes here, a human impact on climate patterns, and exposing the distorted science often used to promote specific agendas. Number 6, wildfires caused by climate change. Don't need to delve into that. We all know the absurdity of that. 7, anti-gravity craft false flag, taking a leap from earthly concerns to cosmic deceit. We discuss the potential implications of false flag alien invasion on that subject if we go into it. We explore the history and technology of anti-grav crafts, questioning the narrative spun around ET life and advanced technology. Moving on to flat earth theory. Number 8, then delving into this, exploring how this belief was strategically created by DARPA and the CIA, demonstrating the lengths to which psyops can go to shape public perception and discourse of reality itself. 9, terrorist attacks, 9/11. We bring the controversial back to a historical event that shook the world, 9/11, terrorist attack. You could go back to Pearl Harbor. You could go back to the Reichstag. We can go back in history to thousands of these. The Great Fire of London, 1666, a classic example. We examine the evidence against the official narrative and discuss the possible motives and actors behind these tragic events. That's a very deep dive when we go into the business of state-sponsored terrorism. And number 10, the cancer treatment deception. This is a real biggie. Concluding, this PSYOP exposes the monopolization of cancer treatment. The discussion around this PSYOP, forgive me, will expose the monopolization of cancer treatment. And alternative cures exist but remain suppressed. And of course, highlighting the deception and control in our healthcare system, the full weaponization of human health, which is connected to government and statutory this, that, and the other, the way that executive branches of government and the juridical and judicial branches of government are in collusion and cahoots, largely unconsciously historically, but today, without any doubt, entirely consciously engaged in a conspiracy to defraud humanity of all that is real. So take us now, Dan, to PSYOP number 11.
Okay. I'm going to do this. I know we're on a time constraint here, so I'm going to go very fast. And each one of these slides, obviously, I can go into greater depth, but we're just going to rapidly fire through this.
We've got a bit longer than anticipated. Just so you know, we've been having difficulties getting one of our Hopi elders on the line. We might need to defer that down the line to the next symposium. Very difficult right now to get him onto the line. So we're having technical issues there. So Dan, we've got a bit longer than we planned for, so we can breathe through the rest of the segment.
Oh, fantastic. All right. This is going to be PSYOP topic number 11. We have made little or no progress in reverse engineering extraterrestrial anti-gravity technology. Okay, what indications show anti-gravity craft already exists? You go back to 1915, Tesla was talking about flying craft that he had created. Go back to 1919, you have Maria Orsic, telepathic messages that was giving technology instructions, which she gave to Dr. Schumann, who found viable physics for development. By 1934, they have developed anti-gravity craft, the Nazi SS, 20 years ahead of the United States. Professor Hermann Ober stated, we had help from the people of other worlds. And a U.S. Navy spy revealed the Nazi had a space program to Secretary James Forrestal, who started the Navy spy program in Germany, which William Tompkins testified. At the fall of the Soviet Union, secret Nazi SS documents showed they had developed a number of different craft designs, including large cigar-shaped craft and the different from the Hanabu 1 to Hanabu 2. By 1942, they established a moon base with their craft that could no longer needed rockets. They had a plan to infiltrate into the United States and create this matrix of perception to hide their secret space program from the American people. Over 250,000 Germans, over 100 U-boats, and the Nazis' top Reich scientists all escaped down to Antarctica, and they took with them their advanced anti-gravity craft from Germany. Of course, to hide this, the Rockefeller Foundation, working in alliance with them, rewrote the history of World War II to hide this escape and infiltration. Forrestal sent Admiral Byrd to attack the Nazi base in Antarctica. They were completely defeated because they had directed energy weapons on these advanced craft and completely wiped out all their aircraft. And that was Operation High Jump. Now, Project Dove was a CIA U.S. Air Force psychological operation that they started in 1951 to the day they stood, and every single extraterrestrial-related movie has been worked with the script that forms these psychological operations to form our perceptions of extraterrestrials. The Invention Secrecy Act, 1952, suppresses anyone who has a anti-gravity invention that will automatically receive a national security order, which states that your invention has been deemed to be a detriment to national security. You cannot share it with anyone. So anybody that comes up with anti-gravity invention, and there have been many people, and free energy as well, gets suppressed. The Nazis fly over the Capitol building in 1952 to intimidate the Truman-Eisenhower administration. MJ-12 operations started a psychological operation using George Adamski to keep the public Nazi craft and say they are the Space Brothers from Venus when they're actually German. And the Nazis were landing in Hawaii and also in Nebraska. They had swastikas and iron crosses and Nazi uniforms and talking in High German language. So a number of people saw them. This is something that was very undesirable because they wanted to keep this quiet. In 2013, Dr. Stephen Greer testified that an NSA agent went inside the vault and was shown that we had achieved by October 1954 anti-gravity. So we've not needed rockets, jets, internal combustion engines, surface roadways since that year. Fellow witness, National Press Club, Mark McCandish, testified we have anti-gravity vehicles called alien reproduction vehicles built back in the 1950s that could go faster than the speed of light. In 1956, Young Men magazine had an article on the gravity engines. They call them G engines. After this publication came out, nothing more was heard. And then 1958, NASA was created and run by a former Nazi SS officer, keeping us believing we need rockets to overcome gravity. 1959, Nikola Tesla knew how to create an anti-gravity craft and trained in 1937 Otis Carr. So by 1959, Otis had created and patented his OTC X-1 spacecraft. 2 weeks after a successful flight, the FBI and other government agencies in a secret raid completely shut down their operation and confiscated everything and told him that because you're a threat to overthrow the monetary system of the United States of America is why they did that. Ben Rich, in a speech to UCLA's engineering students, quote, "We have already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects. It would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do." 2001 National Press Club, I was one of the top secret military witnesses here in the only gray outfit. This event inspired a hacker in the UK, Gary McKinnon, who revealed in the computer systems the US Navy's Solar Warden secret space program, where they have these 8 large cigar-shaped craft that we developed, going back to the 1940s. 2002, Admiral Wilson, who was denied access and threatened, and what brought about the 2001 event, he had a meeting with Dr. Eric Davis, and the memo was leaked, and they talked about the technology that they were reverse engineering that was not of this earth, not made by man, not by human hands. 2006, a patent was granted for an anti-gravitic triangular spacecraft like the TR-3B. 2018, U.S. Navy granted a patent that this design used anti-gravity, and it acknowledged that it's operable. 2021, both of these testimonies would have confirmed we have anti-gravity technology. In 2019, former Air Force intelligence specialist Mike Tuber claimed the 2004 Nimitz anti-gravity Tic Tac. In other words, it was on the New York Times back in 2017. Everybody's seen the Tic Tac, in the Air Force, the Navy video. But then in April 6th of 2021, Mike Tuber comes out publicly and says, I made the whole thing up. There's nothing to this. I was a psychological test. 1 week later, on April 13th, disclosure witness Mark McCandish, whose testimony reveals we have anti-gravity craft built back in the 50s, had planned on testifying at the June 2021 UFO UAP hearing, was found dead with a gunshot to his head. Did someone pay both of these men a visit? Okay, who has claimed we don't have advanced anti-gravitic technology fully developed from reverse engineering extraterrestrial spacecraft? Now, in 1993, I traveled outside Area 51 and met with Bob Lazar and recorded him for 2 hours asking questions. And he expressed that due to the highly compartmentalized structure, they were unable to bring in more of the scientific community minds to reverse engineer the effort of the Zeta 2 Reticuli spacecraft Lazar was working on in order to make significant progress. Now, you have to keep in mind that these operations are highly compartmentalized. So what one person is aware of, another person in another operation has no idea. It's just the way compartmentalized operations work. Now, in the leaked Admiral Wilson memo, the Admiral was told that reverse engineering of extraterrestrial craft was, quote, going on for years and years with very slow progress, agonizingly slow, with little or no success. And then Dr. Eric Davis, he's briefing members of Congress, comes out in the New York Times. Whenever anything comes out from the New York Times, we're on their head propaganda outlets. Basically spoke that the lack of success in reverse engineering is due to difficulties understanding the new physics of operating the recovered craft. It was his belief that the reverse engineering program suffered from a lack of funding. Now, the Senate UFO UAP hearing that Mark was going to testify at, these intelligence officials, Office of Naval Intelligence, the other one, they denied that the U.S. has such technology. And interestingly, Congressman Mike Gallagher brought up the Admiral Wilson memo, which is a hot potato, and the Malmstrom Air Force Base incident, where they shut down all the nuclear-tipped ICBMs. Now, these intelligence specialists that are supposed to be in charge of this, they're not aware of what the average, teenage UFO buff knows about this kind of thing. So it's, highly suspicious that these people are the gatekeepers. Who has spoken of an alien attack from outer space? Going back to 1955, General Douglas MacArthur had a huge amount of information. Truman put a top secret gag order on him. And he went to the New York Times and said, quote, "The nations of the world will have to unite, for the next world war will be an interplanetary war. The nations of Earth must someday make a common front against attack from people from other planets." In 1987, President Ronald Reagan, his famous United Nations speech, quote, "Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. Now, in 2014, President Bill Clinton kind of echoes this on the Jimmy Kimmel regarding the benefits of an alien invasion, where he says, quote, "If we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised," Clinton said. "I just hope it's not like Independence Day. It may be the only way to unite this increasingly divided world of ours. Think of all the differences among people of Earth, which seem small if we feel threatened by a space invader. That's the whole theory of Independence Day. Everybody gets together and makes nice." So here we are today, 2014. What could this lie possibly serve besides not letting our adversaries know we have this type of technology? And you have to think our adversaries, you think China, Russia, so forth, they already have they already have their own secret space programs. There has been several indications that a plan has been in place to create a false flag alien invasion. What evidence is there for a plan for a false flag alien invasion? 1967, the report from Iron Mountain. This leaked document concludes that war, or a credible substitute for war, is necessary if governments are to maintain power. In other words, the need for continual create ongoing enemies through false flag events to perpetuate war on this planet. Now, when President Lyndon Johnson found out about this report, he hit the roof and he had it suppressed for all time. Now, in going through this document, I noticed on page 51, it said, quote, "It had been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope of peace, etc., by uniting mankind against a danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out of our world invasion threat." Now, this was a document back in 1967, and you have to think about that if we had anti-gravity craft back in 1954, they'd have the technology to be able to pull it off. In 1977, Werner von Braun was dying of cancer. On his deathbed, Dr. Carl Rosin, another witness that joined in the National Press Club in 2001, testified that he was shown these advanced plans to create these false flag events, to create these enemies. Number one would be the Soviets, would be the first in the series. The next one, which was in line, this was in May of 2001. In September, we know what happened on 9/11. Rogue nations followed that, such as North Korea and Iran. Asteroids was next on the list. Then he would repeat over and over again that the final card, the last card, would be the extraterrestrial threat, but it is all a lie. And then Hillary was freaking out because Trump was way ahead on the polls, and they hired the Benson Strategy Group, which Anonymous was able to leak and get this document out, where they recommended a false flag alien invasion to salvage the Clinton campaign. And you can see here, the highest percentage was 38% attacked by extraterrestrials. They had shooting war in the neighborhood, they had biblical event, external invading force, but the extraterrestrial one won the top bid. The document analyzes a number of salvage scenarios and recommends one called Fire Sign, which is a false flag extraterrestrial invasion using advanced holographic technology. So, don't be fooled. There we go.
Is that it?
Yep.
Fantastic.
I did as fast as I possibly could.
No. I love that. I love that. And my God, just the prospect of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation and their repugnant CGI Clinton Global Initiative, which was really the technology that bought the basement out of the United Nations, incidentally, back in the day, in the 2000s. It was the CGI that was really the front. It was, in a sense, a precursor to the World Economic Forum. I mapped that out back in the day. And when I was in the UN, I was watching how the CGI was at the front working in tandem with Chinese billionaires connected to the CCP, buying out all the NGOs and the IGOs in the basement of the UN. It's very, very clever stuff. But the idea that the Clintons were that desperate that they were sat around the breakfast table sketching notes on mounting, alien invasions in order to hang on to power. I mean, that's just too funny. Jane, your thoughts on this presentation? Now, you're going to get a slap from me, woman, one of these days,
I got a little sign on my desk that says unmute. I am familiar with a lot of what Dan was bringing up, but there was also some very interesting that stuff about Clinton, that survey of what to create was very, very interesting. But we're not buying it anymore. I think we're all woken up and we realize they're just not going to win. There's evidence everywhere that they are crumbling around us, our enemies or our adversaries or whatever you want to call them.
I call them our Zen masters. They served us well in the evolution of our spirit as we rekindle the flame of Atman.
Yeah.
Ilana, your thoughts on that delightful presentation.
Oh, it was very good. It was very simple, I really like that when I can kind of grasp the whole picture. And I was familiar with a lot of that. One of the things that has influenced me, though, and I wonder, Dan, if you've heard this, I'm in touch with about a dozen MK Ultra survivors, and some of them thrivers, some of them not. One of them claims to have been programmed with, what is the name of that? Greer, Stephen Greer, to have been MK Ultra programmed with him. They have a kind of twinning thing they do in MK Ultra, and therefore every time he talks, this is on my mind as I'm sort of wading my way through what he's saying. Have you ever heard anything about that?
No, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that before. I respect Dr. Greer for all the efforts he's done. We differ on the opinion that all the extraterrestrials in the entire galaxy are benevolent. There's a lot of different agendas. Fortunately, most of them are, and they're working with us.
Is that what he says, that they're all benevolent?
Yeah, that there are no regressive type extraterrestrials such as the reptilians, the Zakar Empire or the Nibu. But fortunately, they've all been removed from our solar system back in 2021 as the Arlington Institute, John Peterson, the 3 independent sources, it's a Navy think tank, confirmed exactly what Elena Danaan said, that these regressive extraterrestrial, in other words, the extraterrestrial overlords that Jane brought in her presentation, have been removed out of our solar system. So we just have the human element to deal with, the clean house.
Yeah, but when we say the human element, we're talking about the proxy class of human or subhuman, the kind of the kind of subhuman exemplified, and this is no joke, exemplified by the Bill Gates and the Anthony Fauci's and the Hillary Clintons of this world, who function as human beings and to all intents and purposes fulfill the station of human beings, but are without any question of doubt the diabolical functionaries or proxies of those archonic forces, who, as you rightly say, are no longer in this world, but there's a kind of a decay or an echo going on with the proxy class. And curious, Jacob Rothschild shuffled off his mortal coil this last week, that scion of the of the Anunnaki, or the negative aspect of the Anunnaki, I should say. But what are your thoughts on that? The dying of the light of the old patriarchy, Kissinger down, Soros is next, obviously. After Soros is Klaus Schwab, obviously. After Klaus Schwab is the Bill and Hillary Clinton echelon. They're at that point. They've fulminated in that sense. Do you think that we're going to see any kind of continuance through their children, their grandchildren? That's a question for all. I'm curious to know your answers. Elena, what do you think?
Oh my gosh. I was just sitting here contemplating something that you said. I mean, to me, the whole question of whether an alien intelligence, you could call it an entity, you could call it an alien, you can call it a devil, a demon, you can call it a lot of things. I always feel, and I think I've said this on your show before, Sasha, that if it enters, if we leave a vacuum in our spiritual life, we human beings, we higher dimensional beings here having a material experience, as Madonna sang long ago, if that happens, then there will be some entity that will rush to fill that vacuum.
Right.
And then I don't know that we're dealing with a human being anymore. Now, of course, I can't make that rash judgment unless I see a lot of activities of that so-called person over time. Then I might finally decide, yeah, that person is not really human, though they have a head and a torso and two arms and two legs, but they've been taken over. And that's the problem I see with people who don't have an inner life. Is, maybe they don't believe in God, maybe they don't believe in a lot of things, but if you leave a vacuum in your spiritual life, something will fill it, and maybe that keeps me good. I don't know, but I'm pretty good now, for probably the best I've ever been in my entire life. It took a long time to get here, but to stay in that consciousness, that higher consciousness of what your work is and what you're doing.
Yes, which is why we're having this very kind of quantum conversation here. Talking about psychological operations and the shenanigans of evil empire, but we're also trying to reconcile it with the return of the rod to the eternal mother, and the end of the patriarchy as it now transmutes into a sort of a new earth horizon. Which emerges on the cornerstone of unity consciousness, essentially. We're trying to reconcile the shit show of reality into a necessary and needful compression point that does actually alchemize and transmute us into heaven on earth / the resurrection of the angelic human. So it's powerful stuff. But my question really was more to do with, do we think that the echo in the blood of the Soroses, Kissinger was a bizarre, banal creature. I don't think he had any children, but these other orchestrators of evil, the Clintons and the Obamas. We know that Obama's not capable of having children, and they're almost certainly not his. But are these scions of these lineages likely to have any capacity to carry forth the legacy of evil? Yeah. What do you think, Jane?
I have it on good authority that these families in their entirety are being taken down. And we're not only past the level of the super high up ones, we're down to the little nitty gritty ones. And it has come across my desk lately that there are many incredible world famous artists' work available for sale, such as the greatest names you can think of: Van Gogh, Manet, all of them. And if those are available to sell for a puny little commoner as I, then that means their loot is being distributed right now as we sit here and speak, and that everything is going forward as planned, and our new earth is much nearer than we think. And all this techno rhetoric and all this technology about the end game and all of this, I think, goes down the toilet with it. And as that bad technology is being used for what they've used it for, so too can it be used for good, and possibly in many cases is reversible through frequency, which is my hope.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Good.
Very good. I think you momentarily froze on my screen. Okay, friends. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this segment up here. I just want to invite each of my guests to summarize, really, psychological operations. Are they, in light of what we've just discussed here,
are psychological operations per se, have they reached their nadir point or their zenith? Is it over? Are we about to transmute and transcend beyond psychological operations? I know that Ilana's work is really terrifying if you go into it. We understand the whole Ahriman and the connection to the weaponization of the biosphere and the stratosphere, and how the stage has been set for this false light matrix to essentially assimilate into, infiltrate, and take over and commandeer all living systems, all sentient expression. Of course, that's the existential threat. Of course, that is playing out in the ethers. I conversely believe that it's precisely because it has revealed itself now in its entirety that it cannot and will not actually gain traction or animus in the real sense. It's been exposed. That is the point of the great revelation, and all that will emerge in its stead is a resurrection of all that is true, righteous, goodly, and godly, the resurrection of the angelic template. That's my sense of it. Ilana, what is your summary?
Well, I'm with you on that, and it for me it has also to do with how the people that I've encountered they just don't have any confidence in themselves. They don't see the human being at all the same as I do. That we've learned about all this technology. My books are now in 5 languages in Europe because Europeans still read, unlike Americans. I'm just concerned that we're not remaining conscious. We're falling prey to fear. We're falling prey to drugs, to all sorts of things, especially the youth. And I want to have this all kind of clarified because I believe consciousness is going to do exactly what you said, Sasha, that it is going to salvage us. And it is in a way a good thing that we've had to go through the last 3 to 4 years of this latest PSYOP in order to understand how we can be swept away by fear and to really be ready for it when they attempt again. Because I think there will be attempts, but it'll never work. It'll never work.
Right. And therein is the crux of the Divine Comedy, right? That we still go through the motions of these diabolical thralls, and yet, what surfaces? Look at HIV/AIDS. Look how that was intended to utterly decimate the Aboriginals. It didn't work. It never does. It never can. It never will. Dan, your summary.
Well, it's interesting, Klaus Schwab, with the World Economic Forum, they listed 6 of the biggest threats to us on the planet. And the number 1 threat is disinformation, which means, disinformation of their narrative, their control. It's interesting, we have an artificially created divide amongst our people. And it's only because of these psychological operations that the people aren't aware of the enemy behind the curtain that's been doing this. My view of the future is very optimistic. I don't believe that we would have all the support that we have in our solar system right now from other cultures that have arrived here. And that I think a lot of this is for bringing, it's like they're backed into a corner and they're desperate right now, and so they're pulling out all stops, and it's just ludicrous the things that they're doing. And so it's like, in a way, it's waking up a lot of people. And so love, not fear, is the way. There's always been the people who want to enslave and the people who want to liberate and empower. And so I have faith we're going to pull through this.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dan. Jane, sign off from you.
Yeah, well, if I were a betting woman, I got all my money or wisdom or creation currency on the solar flare, the magical solar flare. I think that that's going to be a phenomenal astrological event. And on the other side of that, we could pick up this conversation, see what happens.
Indeed, that's a great way to sign off, and I would agree with that. The Micronova event in 2046, to my mind, is the biggie. But there's a multiplicity of them between now and then. And indeed, it seems to be that the true carrier of the upshift, these great quantum upshifts that are occurring, a conjugation between the so-called solar flares, which is the hyperdimensional eyeball looking into this realm of expression, as those flares engage with the so-called photon band, this hyperdimensional field of vibral light through which we traverse at the semi-arc of each grand precession of the equinox, and to be certain that we're traversing through now and reaching a compression point within, it all speaks to the mechanics of ascension and to the grace of God. Well, I just want to thank Elena Freeland, Dan Willis, and Jane Evershed for this beautiful conversation of the last over two and a half hours thereabouts. Very, very grateful. I have to say, I disagree with my own prognostication that this is likely to be the last in the series of PSYOPs. I think we have actually opened the gate here to another discussion, which takes us into the transcendental, the transmutative, and alchemical, transmutative, and transcendental discussion relating to trauma, PSYOPs, and all the shit show of history. So I'm not going to let this conversation go with all of you quite yet. We'll take it forward with another panel, because I'm that kind of creature, and I just think that more questions have been raised today than not, and I'm very, very grateful to all of you. Elena, thank you. Dan, thank you. Jane, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, everyone.
Great stuff. Okie dokie, friends. So that winds up this open source segment. Again, I can only apologize for looking like your great auntie today with what looks like pajamas and a bad hairdo, but I literally stumbled out of bed into the onset of a blizzard here, Nevada City, which is not quite hitting, I have to say. Just about got caffeine into my system. It was a long, late night last night with a big show here, which was filmed beautifully and which will retroactively be released. Very moving, very stirring conversation with some remarkable people who also came on the stage. I just wanted to make mention of the fact that, in fact, let me share my screen and do this. Oh, balls. It says open system settings. If I am to share my screen, that's very boring. One moment. Give me a moment, friends, because I do actually need to share my screen. And, oh, there we go. No, it's only opening the, can I open my entire screen? Are you seeing my entire screen there, Christy, give me a thumbs up. You're not. Okay. I'm sorry, friends. I got a new laptop, and this new laptop is locking me out of sharing my screen, which is a great shame, because I had some slides I wanted to just discourse on momentarily. I'm going to try one more time, see if I can do it. Hold the line. Thank you for bearing with me. Share screen. Site we able to see, choose window. Keynote. Try this. Okay. No, I'm sorry, friends. Can't do it and won't do it. However, in light of what we just discussed with Ilana, this technology here, I don't know if you can see this. This is the LifePod, the first in the LifePod series, not to be confused with this little computer here. This remarkable computer, many of you will remember, this smaller computer here is the first release in the LifePod Brain series. This is a voice diagnostic technology. We've literally just hit the soil in the US last week with them. And we're ready to now chime them out to people. Please check the links below, because when we're talking about ameliorating and protecting against these weaponized frequencies, this is best in class in the world that we are aware of. And this is why we spent the last couple of years building relationships with the Russian and Eastern European science geniuses behind this technology. This is pure Tesla science taken to the greatest extent. This you speak into, diagnoses through the vibration, through the sound. Essentially, I'm speaking reductively, but it scans and diagnoses, and then it calibrates the counterpoint frequencies to whatever the condition is or what the conditions are within the orchestra of ailments in your body, and then calibrates this into a field effect using frequencies that counterpoint the diseases or the ailments. Every disease is a frequency, as Ilana perfectly enumerated in her presentation, and I was so happy she did it because it made my job easy, talking about the linguistic wave genetics and beaming the fact that the weaponized biosphere is now saturated with these particulates, and the technology and apparatus that is extant controlled by these diabolical forces within the deep state of the military industrial complex, so to speak. They have the capacity to dial the diseases into our bodies. So frequency protection and amelioration is essential. I've been saying this for the last few years, not letting up on this. Please check the links below if you're able to get this technology. That's one for personal use. You can't use that in a room filled with other people because it picks up on the resonance of all the other people in nearby. That's something very powerful, incredibly dynamic, has thousands of presets in it of counterpoint frequencies to the ailments. This is the more generic one that some of you are familiar with, and this is also available. Check this out. And this is the one which you can calibrate yourself. It momentarily scans you. It attunes to you, to your frequency field, and then you can scroll through the computer. You can highlight the disease or the ailment that you've got. Could be diabetes, glaucoma, rheumatism, cancer, hay fever. It could be very, very innocuous things like hay fever. You go to the complexes, as you know, choose the complex, boom, go through the various programs, and then press the program, hold it. It's calibrating now to me. In 20 seconds, it'll zzz, and it's now calibrated. So that can now walk around with me or be in the plane or in the car, in the supermarket, and it's not going to pick up on third-party frequencies, but it's going to put out the counterpoint frequencies to my ailment. So we've been working with it for a long time. This is the best-in-class frequency technologies in the world that I'm aware of. I've been involved in this particular aspect of vanguard science for a long, long time, as has Dan Willis and others who come onto this platform. So that's it, friends. Just wanted to mention that there are solutions, there are technological solutions, and of course the other piece that I'm going to make mention of here briefly is the New Earth Pharmacy, the New Earth Pharmacy with an F for pharmacy.com, thenewearthpharmacy.com. We are on the soil into fulfillment. Everyone who ordered through Lazarus should have now received their spike neutralizing microbial formulas. We're hearing already amazing feedback in the last few days. Very excited to share that feedback. We'll do that on the platform. But please, anyone out there who is concerned about what is loosely coined spike protein replication and then weaponized E. coli, those are the two horns of the devil, in a sense, that are hacking into the immune system and bringing about auto-destruct, which is why 16-year-old footballers are dropping dead on, it doesn't matter who you are. We are all of us open now to this cacophony of bad electrochemistry and bad biochemistry connected to the vaccination programs and the weaponization of our biosphere. So I'll leave it at that. But please know that the frequency technologies are here to remediate the frequency field around you, around your house, around your family. And on the other side of the equation, from the inside, the endogenous microbiome, we have the microbiological formulas now coming out of the military basement in Eastern Europe, as many of you know, that are the cavalry that we've been waiting for as far as that's concerned. We're sitting back and just seeing the testimonials fly in, and we're very, very excited. So you can get the spike neutralizing formula, or you can get the spike and E. coli, weaponized E. coli neutralizing formulas available through the New Earth Pharmacy pharmacy with an F for fuck you, klausschwab.com. I hope you enjoy that giggle. Friends, thank you very much for putting up with my wheezing. Christy, that takes us to 1 minute overtime. I'm doing rather well using my psionic clocks. I never look at the clock. Thanks, friends. I hope you enjoy the next segment coming up. I will put the banner here for you. And Christy will lead us in to the next segment momentarily. Speak later. Lazarus, very happy today to be joined by one of our greatest fellows, the very brilliant Thomas J. Brown, who doesn't need any introduction to the Lazarus audience. But today's conversation, a cosmic symphony, a radical rethink of science, spirituality, and existence. When Tom and I were recently together in Bali, he told me he had a few goodies up his sleeve, and this conversation is essentially that. Just a bit of backstory here. Thomas J. Brown is, as many of you know, an intellectual pioneer who